What's up, everybody? Hello and welcome to Not Your Average Meta, an MTG Commander channel dedicated to bringing you decks and commanders you wouldn't normally find in your average meta. This week's video is brought to you by our new channel sponsor, International MTG. If you're looking for competitive pricing on your favorite MTG cards, old and new, be sure to check out the International MTG store and TCG Player, link in the description of this video. On this week's episode of Not Your Average Meta, we would like to welcome everybody back for the first game of our second season. Our first season was a great success and we hope to keep that ball rolling in 2022. First up this week, we have Foil making a reappearance on the channel, playing his newly made Colfenor the Last U deck. This deck looks to abuse Colfenor's ability to return creatures from his graveyard to his hand for ultimate recurring value. Then we have Gavin returning to the channel playing his new Birgi God of Storytelling deck. This is a Dragon's Approach deck that looks to burn his opponents and tutor out big dragons. Next we have Fogral coming back to protect his house playing his new Galea Kindler of Hope deck. This is a Voltron deck based on using auras to pump up his commander with a little bit of elf tribal synergy sprinkled in. And finally we have Justin returning this season playing Adriana, Captain of the Guard. This is a Knight tribal deck that looks to use his commander's melee ability along with extra combat steps to run over his opponents. Now the other fighters, let's step into the Thunderdome and see which deck will come out on top. Turn 1 Fog plays a Forest and that sweet turn 1 Soul Ring. Justin plays Unclaimed Territory naming Knights. Foil draws and plays a tapped Selesnya Guildgate. Gavin draws and plays a Mountain before he exiles a card to cast a Crow Mox. He then taps 2 to play an Arcane Signet and casts a Mox Amber for 0. Fog draws and plays an Evolving Wilds. He then taps a Forest for Finhorn Elves, then cracks the Wilds to get a basic Plains. Justin draws and plays a Mountain before tapping 2 for Dolmen's Gate. Foil plays a Snow-Covered Plains for turn and passes. Gavin draws, plays a Mountain, and then taps out to cast his commander, Birgi, in a Dragon's Rage Channeler. Fog draws and plays an Overgrown Farmland before tapping out for Mirari's Wake. He then proves a point by swinging his Elves at Justin for 2 damage. Justin draws and plays a Plains. He then taps 2 for Cathartic Reunion, discarding 2 cards before drawing 3. Foil draws and plays a land for turn before tapping out to cast a Cultivate, going to get a Swamp, putting it into play. Gavin plays Jessica's Will for turn, picking Justin, getting 6 red mana. He then exiles his top 3 cards from his library. He then pays 1 for Locket of Yesterdays, plays a Mountain for turn, and then casts Thrill of Possibility, discarding a card and drawing 2. Gavin then casts a Dragon's Approach, dealing 3 damage to each opponent, before casting a second Dragon's Approach, dealing 3 more damage to his opponents. Fog and taps for turn and draws, before playing another Forest. He then pays 2 for a Growth Spiral, drawing a card and playing an additional land. Fog then taps enough to cast his commander Galea. He then enchants Galea with Shielding Plaques, drawing a card, before tapping 3 for an Adaptive Automaton, picking Elves. Fog then attacks Gavin for 3 and passes. Justin draws and plays another Plains. He then taps 3 for History of Benalia, getting a Knight token. Foil plays a Swamp for turn, then pays 4 for a Culling Ritual, destroying all of Gavin's mana rocks. He then taps out and casts his commander Colfenor, an Ornithopter for 0, and Cragmaw. Gavin draws and casts a Dragon's Approach, dealing 3 damage to each opponent. Fog draws and plays a Deserted Beach for turn, then goes to combat swinging his commander Justin for 6 commander damage. He then plays a Dawnheart Geist and passes. Justin gets another Knight on his upkeep, then draws for turn. He then plays a Mountain for turn, and then taps out to cast his commander, Adriana. Foil plays a land for turn, then casts a Reclamation Sage, destroying the Mirari's Wake. Gavin draws for turn and passes. Fog draws and plays an Enchantress's Presence, before swinging his commander Gavin for 5 commander damage. Justin ticks down a Saga before drawing for turn. He then plays a Mountain before casting Parhelion Patrol. At the end of his turn, Foil casts Crows and Grip to destroy the Enchantress's Presence. Foil untaps and draws for turn. He then cycles to Triumph and draws a card. Gavin just draws and passes. Fog draws and taps 2 for Nature's Lore, going to get a Canopy Vista. He then goes to combat swinging 5 more commander damage at Gavin. Justin draws and plays a Mountain for turn, then taps 2 for Knight of the White Orchid, going to get a Plains. He then casts a Circle of Loyalty and goes to combat swinging his commander at Fog. A Knight at Gavin and his Parhelion at Foil. This pumps his creatures up +3/+3 from the melee trigger, which leads to Fog and foil blocking while Gavin takes 5 damage. Foil draws, plays a Sunpetal Grove, and passes. Gavin draws, plays a Soul Ring, and then passes. Fog draws for turn, then casts Corrupted Conscience off the top of his library, enchanting his commander. He then swings his commander Foil, who blocks with the Reclamation Sage. Fog then casts Open the Armory, going to get an Armadillo Cloak from his library, and plays a land before passing. Justin draws and plays a Mountain before tapping 4 for a Gallant Cavalry, getting another Knight token. He then swings his commander at Fog, a Knight at Gavin, and the Parhelion at Foil. This triggers melee, pumping up his creatures +3/+3 again. Fog and Foil both block while Gavin takes his damage. Foil draws for turn, then recasts the Reclamation Sage, destroying Fog's shielding plaques, and passes. Gavin draws and plays a tapped Valakut. Fog draws and enchants his commander with Armadillo Cloak before casting his own Reclamation Sage, blowing up the Circle of Loyalty. He then goes to combat and swings his commander at Foil, who blocks with Crackmaw. Fog gains 6 life and Foil takes 3 infect damage. Crackmaw dies and Foil crits a 3/3 Hydra token. Justin draws and casts his Swords to Plowshares on Fog's commander. He then goes to combat, and in response, Foil casts his own Swords to Plowshares on Justin's commander. Justin then recasts his commander for 7 and passes. Foil draws for turn, then pays 3 for a Glorious Anthem. He then recasts the Ornithopter, and then casts Karma Guide, returning Crackmaw to play with 3 counters on him. He then swings his commander at Fog for 3 commander damage. Gavin untaps for turn, then swings Birgi at Fog for 3 commander damage. After combat damage, Gavin taps out and casts Nullspine Dragon, discarding his hand, then drawing 3 cards. Fog plays an island for turn, then taps enough to recast his commander and passes. Justin draws for turn and plays the Plains. He then goes to combat, swinging multiple creatures at each opponent, pumping them up +3/+3. Gavin and Fog take their damage while Foil double blocks his commander. Both of Foil's creatures trigger his commander, returning them back to his hand. Foil then gets another Hydra token before Justin pays 8 to cast Ondu Inversion, destroying all non-land permanents. Foil draws for turn, then recasts his Ornithopter. He then pays 3 to cast Grim Tutor, going to find a card and losing 3 life. He then recasts Cragmaw again and passes. Gavin draws for turn and casts a Gutter Snipe. He then casts Wheel of Misfortune. He then deals 2 damage to each opponent, and each player reveals their numbers, which has Foil losing 10 life and wheeling his hand, along with Fog and Justin, while Gavin does nothing. Fog draws and casts Rite of Harmony. He then casts a Wild Growth, enchanting his basic forest before drawing a card. He then casts Estrad the Mask and an Elvish Visionary, drawing 2 cards. Fog then upticks Estrad, untapping his enchanted forest before using it to cast Curse of Verbrosity on Foil, drawing another card. Justin plays a command tower for turn to cast Adeline or Splendid Cathar, Silverwing Squadron, and then a Talisman of Conviction. Foil draws and plays a Moldervine Reclamation and a Welsh Rider, creating a Go token. He then casts Lawnor Elves and passes. Gavin draws and swings his Gutter Snipe at Foil for 2 damage. He then plays a Mountain and casts Dragon's Approach, dealing 5 damage to each opponent, before casting another Dragon's Approach, which in response, Fog swords the Gutter Snipe. Each opponent then takes another 3 damage, and Gavin activates his approaches to go get a Dragon Mage from his library, putting it into play. Fog draws for turn, then taps enough mana to recast his commander for a 3rd time. He then casts Bear Umbra, enchanting his commander, and passes. Justin plays the Plains for turn, then goes to recast Adriana, which Fog counters with an Arcane Denial. He then casts a Hero of Bladehold, and then goes to combat, swinging his Squadron at Fog, getting a human token attacking each opponent. Everybody then blocks the tokens, and Fog takes his damage. Foil draws and plays a tapped Guildgate for turn. He then recasts Colfenor and passes. Gavin draws, then casts a Cloud Key, choosing Sorcery. He then swings his Dragon Mage at Fog, which has each player wheeling their hands when it deals combat damage. Gavin then plays a Mountain and a Dragon's Approach, dealing 3 damage to each opponent. He then casts a second Dragon's Approach, dealing 3 more damage. Fogg draws and casts Finest Hour, then ults Estrid to return all his enchantments from his graveyard to play. He then returns Sigil of the Empty Throne, Hallowed Haunting, Enchantress's Presence, Mirari's Wake, Utopia Sprawl, Rancor, Corrupted Conscience, Armadillo Cloak, and Shielding Plaques. He then casts Leyline of Anticipation, creating a 4/4 Angel token and drawing a card. Fogg then casts Freylease, then downticks her to create an Elf token, before casting a Moonblast Cleric, going to go get all the glitters, putting it on top of his library. He then goes to combat, swinging at Gavin, taking him out of the game, untapping all of his lands and gaining 13 life. He then casts all the glitters on his commander, getting another Angel token and drawing another card. He then casts Brainstorm, drawing 3 cards, then putting 2 cards back on top of his library. Fogg then casts Calyx, down-ticking him to exile Justin's Silverwing Squadron until his Sigil of the Empty Throne leaves play. He then swings his commander foil, taking him out of the game, untaps all his lands, and then gains 27 life. Justin draws Return and plays a Soul Ring. He then casts Unbreakable Formation before he casts Shatters the Sky, destroying Fogg's Bear Umbra. Justin and Fogg both draw a card, and Justin casts Valiant Knight. Justin then moves to his combat step, and after calculating that he doesn't have enough damage to kill Fogg, he decides to concede the game.
Alright, so we have the first 2022 winner of Not Your Average Meta. Fogg over here playing his Bant deck. How you feel about this deck?
You know, it's good representing Bant for the first time ever on the channel. Good to get that Infect win, you know? I'd like to thank all my opponents for not putting up a great fight. And, the win really speaks for itself. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you can see more games and decks you wouldn't normally see in your average meta.